enough banter. Let's get started. This packet is by Berkeley A, MIT B, and Southampton A.
Where's Southampton?
In England, yeah. Here's toss-up 1. Nancy Stokey found that an intertemporal form of this practice is unprofitable in the absence of production costs. A 1933 book by Joan Robinson created the categories of strong and weak markets to gauge the effects of this practice. Arthur Pigou distinguished between complete, direct, and indirect types of this practice in his Economics of Welfare. When there are no transaction costs, arbitrage is a possible risk involved with this practice. The Robinson-Patman Act was an early attempt to prohibit anti-competitive forms of this practice. Student discounts are an example of the third-degree type.
Price discrimination.
Yes.
Oh my god, I suck at Yeah, I know. I'm so glad you got that.
And here's your bonus. This leader established order among various warring tribes, including the Chuds, Slavs, and Krivichi, and established his base of power at Home Guard. For 10 points each, name this man who was often conflated with a warrior from Dorestad who served Louis the German, since the only other account of his is Nestor's primary chronicle. He names a line of rulers that included Yaroslav the Wise.
Oh, it's Rurik.
Yeah, it is,
Rurik.
yeah.
The Rurikid dynasty established a federation of Slavic states centered on this city until an invasion. Yes. The codex named for this southern Ukrainian monastery is the most valuable source on the history of the southern Rus, as it contains the primary Kiev and Galician Volhynian chronicles. Mikhail Romanov was hiding in this monastery when he was proclaimed Tsar by the Zemsky Sobor.
Classic.
So it's a monastery and it names a codex?
Saint something, probably, right?
Saint
Thousands.
This is Hypatian Monastery.
Okay, sure.
Ipatievsky.
No, it's the Galicia, like, it's not that Galicia.
20 points. Yeah, there's another Galicia in
like
Central Eastern
Ukraine.
Europe.
Yeah. Open to the Ukraine.
Toss-up 2. One structure in this building frames a rotating wireframe installation in the shape of a cloud titled Flare 2. In this building, 4 vertical screens each show people soundlessly succumbing to one of the 4 elements. Bill Viola's Martyrs was commissioned for this building, which features metalwork by Jean Tijoux and a chapel memorializing Americans who died in Britain during World War II. The 2 spires and dome of this building are visible above a thick band of smoke in a 1940 photograph taken by Herbert Mason during the Blitz. Below that dome, the interior of this building contains a whispering gallery. For 10 points, name this.
St. Paul's Cathedral.
Yes.
Nice.
Here is your bonus. Answer the following about the English word in linguistics. For 10 points each. The unstressed version of makes this most common vowel sound in English phonetically described as a mid-central vowel. This sound is represented by an upside-down E in the International Alphabet. Yes. The word belongs to this lexical category, which precedes nouns in English. Words in this lexical category include articles like the, demonstratives like this, and quantifiers like every.
They're adjectives.
Yes.
Determiners.
Oh.
Okay.
In truth conditional semantics, the denotation of can be analyzed as this kind of mathematical object, a subset of the Cartesian product of 2 sets.
It's like,
For example, a cat is eating is true if and only if the ordered pair of the set of cats and the set of eaters is an element of this kind of object.
it's an element of,
Like the total set or something?
I don't
The
know.
combined
The
set?
union?
Union.
This is a relation.
Okay.
10 points. Toss-up 3. This author set a poem where the wind falls in like stones from the white-hearted water, and when we touch, we enter touch entirely. In another poem, this author described a type of death that leaves the page of the book carelessly open, the phone off the hook, and the love, whatever it was, an infection. This poet declared, whether you are pretty or not, I outlive you, bend down my strange face to yours and forgive you, at the end of an elegy cataloging the possessions left behind by her deceased father. This author of All My Pretty Ones and Wanting to Die included a poem about menstruating at the age of 40 in her Pulitzer-winning collection Live or Die. For 10 points, name this.
And Sexton.
Yes.
Awesome.
Your bonus. Answer the following about Neo-Riemannian music theory, which bases harmony on transformations between major and minor triads. For 10 points each. The 3 basic transformations are L for leading tone, R for relative, and P, which refers to this term for major and minor keys that share a tonic. Thus, the P transformation changes G major to G minor, and vice versa.
Ooh. Platonic?
Parallel keys. Neo-Riemannian transformations can be visualized on an infinite grid called the tonets. The tonets can be folded into a torus when analyzing equal temperament because notes like F sharp and G flat have this type of equivalence, meaning that they're spelled differently but have the same pitch.
In harmonic, right? In harmonic?
Yes. Neo-Riemannian theory can analyze this concept related to counterpoint, in which smoothly moving melodic lines are combined to form a harmonic progression and create polyphonic textures. Conventions relating to this concept include the avoidance of large leaps and parallel fifths.
So that would be,
It's like something continuity
yeah,
or
but
something.
so it's not counterpoint, but it's continuo.
Voice leading.
Okay.
10 points. Toss-up 4. Though evolutionarily selected for, the 7-repeat allele of a gene encoding one of this compound's receptors is markedly almost totally absent in East Asian populations. The transporter for this neurotransmitter unusually contains an extracellular high-affinity zinc binding domain. Cell groups containing this compound can be found in areas A8 through A14. Because it shares a common precursor with neuromelanin, the cell bodies that secrete this compound in the pars compacta are identifiable by their black pigmentation. The mesolimbic and mesocortical pathways transmit this neurotransmitter from the ventral tegmental area. The death of neurons that secrete this compound in the substantia state.
Dopamine.
Yes.
Awesome.
Bonus. A symbol from the Great Gatsby was inspired by this poem's reference to gazing forever on that green light that lingers in the west. For 10 points each. In this conversation poem, whose speaker hopes that the omen of the new moon, with the old moon in her lap, from the ballad of Sir Patrick Spence, might startle this dull pain and make it move and live.
I know who, like, generally it's by. It's either Coleridge or Wordsworth. Is this like the Aeolian harp? Aeolian harp.
Dejection and Ode.
Okay,
This
sure.
romantic poet of Dejection and Ode contributed the rhyme of the Ancient Mariner to the
Yeah,
collaborative
it's Coleridge.
volume. Yes. Later in the poem, Coleridge recalls a time when all misfortunes were but as the stuff whence this faculty made me dreams of happiness. In Biographia Literaria, Coleridge distinguishes this artificial association of memories and emotions from the higher creative ability of imagination.
So it's not imagination, but
It's like some sort of like degenerative form of
it's
imagination.
like relation.
Answer. This
Wrote.
is fancy.
Okay.
10 on that. Toss-up 5. A history written during this time period gives the first account of a tribute sent from abroad by the shaman queen Himiko. A type of steamed bun whose name means barbarian's head may be named for a southern campaign during this period to quell rebellion by the southern barbarians, or Nanman. Chun Shou is best known for writing about this period during which the repeating crossbow was invented. Late in this period, a coup d'etat was carried out at Gaoping Tombs by Sima Yi. This period is often said to begin after a rebellion led by followers of the Way of the Supreme Peace. This period began after the Yellow Turban Rebellion caused the Eastern Han to disintegrate. For 10 points, name this period of Chinese history, whose notables such as Cao Cao of Wei appear in Luo Guanzhong's romance about them.
3 Kingdoms.
Yes.
Okay.
Bonus. People of this profession from the Koga school depleted the supplies of Hara Castle during the Shimabara Rebellion. For 10 points each, name these feudal Japanese spies and mercenaries famed for their stealth. They used concealed blades called shuriken.
Ninja.
A militia called the Ninjas supported President Pascal Lissouba in the late 1990s civil war in this country, which earlier became a one-party communist state in the 1970s under Marianne Ngouabi.
Marianne
African?
Guave.
Would that be Burkina Faso?
Sure. Burkina Faso.
This is Republic of Congo.
Oh, sure.
Unauthorized Mongolian workers in this industry are known as ninjas because they resemble the Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtles when carrying the green bowls on their backs. Peter Lalore led an 1854 rebellion of workers in this industry in Ballarat, Australia.
They're like. Is that like gold miners? Is that like
Let's just say
gold miners?
Yes.
Okay.
Yeah, that's the Eureka Stockade, I think.
Toss-up 6. A Robert Rauschenberg combine named after one of these people is made of a pillow under a box, which itself is under a chicken. The 1920s painting that partially shares its title with its artist earlier, The Dessert, Harmony in Red, depicts one of these people reclining. While living on the French Riviera, Henri Matisse made several paintings of these people, including one with gray trousers and one with raised arms. One of these people holds a fan made of peacock feathers in a painting commissioned by Napoleon's sister. That one of these people reclines and looks over her shoulder at the viewer and is anatomically
Ballerina.
-5.
Okay, that was bad bonus.
And is anatomically inaccurately depicted with extra vertebrae. For 10 points, name these attendants in an Ottoman seraglio, a grand one of which was painted by Jean-Auguste Dominique Ingres.
Odalisque.
Yes. Bonus. Examples of these texts include one written by al-Zamakhshari in the Mu'tazili tradition, and one by al-Tabari that was extended by Ibn Kathir, for 10 points each. Give this Arabic term derived from the root for interpret, which refers to a Quranic exegesis. This is tafsir. Al-Tabari inaugurated a scholarly tradition of tafsir in the 9th century during the reign of this caliphate, in which the Mu'tazili school thrived. It succeeded the Umayyads. Nasr is a specialized form of tafsir by which commands from Islamic law can be abrogated. Those commands generally come from two sources, the Quran and this body of Islamic tradition based on Muhammad's actions, which lends its name to a large sect of Islam. Sunnah.
Oh.
10 points. Toss-up 7. This man is exiled in the fragmentary Lil Stesichorus, which was only published in 1976. Allies assembled by this man took an oath over a bull that they slaughtered on a black shield. A comparison to two dueling bulls used in the Aeneid was borrowed by Statius to describe this man's duel with a king defending his polis. Amphiaraus joined this man's cause and later slew Melanippus after this man gave Amphiaraus' wife -5. Eriphyle the necklace of Harmonia. This man agreed to take turns with his brother as king, but his brother took the first turn and refused to give up the throne. This man and his friend Titius recruited 5 other warriors to march on Thebes, leading Creon to forbid his burial. For 10 points, name this man who was buried by his sister Antigone after warring with his brother Eteocles.
Polynikes.
Yes. Here's your bonus. Non-ideal corrections to this system can be accounted for by the centrifugal distortion constant, typically denoted d, for 10 points each. Name this quantum system whose energy levels are proportional to a factor b equal to h bar squared over 2 times I. The eigenfunctions of this system are spherical harmonics.
Ooh, what's my random guess of a quantum system? Quantum harmonic oscillator.
Rigid rotor.
Sure.
The energy of the rigid rotor is equal to b times j plus 1, where j is an eigenvalue of this quantity. In classical mechanics, this quantity equals the cross product of position and its linear counterpart.
It's angular momentum.
Sure.
Angular momentum.
Electronic transitions in the rigid rotor must be accompanied by a delta J of plus or minus 1 according to one of these rules, which identify quantum transitions for which the probability amplitude is non-zero.
No.
Selection rules. 10. Toss-up 8. In a novel by this author, an aging man neurotically pulls out his gray hairs but suddenly dies upon removing the last one. This author declared, however alienated one may be from the world, suicide is not a form of enlightenment in his Nobel lecture, which he titled for his home country, The Beautiful and Myself. A novel by this author ends with the image of the Milky Way in the sky.
Yeah, it's Kawamata.
Yes.
I recognize that Nobel lecture. But I don't
Answer the following about the Argentinian woman of letters Victoria Ocampo, for 10 points each. Ocampo is best known for founding this literary journal, which carried translations of Western philosophy through José Ortega y Gasset's Revista de Occidente, and published authors from across South America.
She's Argentinian. Buenos Aires. Gazette.
No idea.
Sur. Ocampo's close relationship with this poet following his travels to Argentina in the 1920s led her to publish a book titled for him In the Ravines of San Isidro. This Bengali poet of the Gitanjali later yes. Ocampo translated this British author's unfinished memoir, The Mint, into Spanish. After meeting this man's widow, Sarah Jenner, Ocampo wrote a literary biography of him, examining books like his 7 Pillars of Wisdom.
Oh, it's Lawrence, like Lawrence of Arabia. Lawrence.
20. Toss-up 9. These features can be morphologically classified by their RDP to DP ratio, which is defined only above the threshold shear velocity. The Nabha, or coppice type of these features, are anchored by shrubs or other plants. Ecologist Henry C. Cowles wrote his dissertation on the rapid plant succession that he observed in these features in Indiana. The presence of vegetation facilitates the parabolic type of these features, which point in the opposite direction from the crescent-shaped Barkhan type. These features migrate as material...
Is dunes?
Yes.
Dunes?
Answer the following about water management in a certain region, for 10 points each. The Nurek Dam, once the world's tallest, embanks the Vakhsh River in this country. This country's construction of the Rogun Dam is opposed by one of its western neighbors over fears of the adverse effects on its cotton industry. Tajikistan. The Vakhsh River is a tributary of this river, which was called the Oxus in antiquity. This river's water was diverted along the Karakum Canal, which by some estimates leaked half of its water.
Volga.
Amu Darya. The inefficiency of the Karakum Canal contributed to the rapid shrinking of this lake, which disrupted the livelihoods of thousands in Kazakhstan and Uzbekistan. Yes, 10. Toss-up 10. This dynasty's rise and rule is the subject of the thesis and best-known works of conservative historian David Starkey, including a BBC documentary. Historians generally credit this dynasty with ending bastard feudalism by requiring a royal license to have armed retainers. The first king of this dynasty established trade with Spain through the Treaty of Medina del Campo and ordered the beheading of a 14-year-old for backing the pretender Perkin Warbed. That first king from this dynasty created an institution for trying people of high rank.
Tutor.
Yes.
Nice.
Answer the following. No. Your bonus. For templates lacking this structure, random hexamers are often used for RT-PCR instead of oligo-DT primers, for 10 points each. Name the structure that is post-transcriptionally added to the 3' end of a molecule to prevent its enzymatic degradation.
Which one? It's either the cap or the poly-A tail. I think that's what the cap does. The cap.
Poly-A tail. The poly-A tail is a modification to this molecule, which is produced from
mRNA.
DNA during transcription.
It's mRNA.
Before polyadenylation, the enzyme CPSF cleaves the 3' signaling portion of the newly synthesized mRNA transcript, which contains a region rich in these two nucleotides. Neither of them is inosine, but these two nucleotides form the most common wobble base pair.
Isn't it like... I was thinking GC. Nucleotide?
Yeah, no, that's...
GC.
I have G and U.
Okay.
That is half time.
185, 35.
185, 35.
Yeah, so I have.
Toss-up 11. This material was key to the economy of the ghost town of Whitnum, Australia, which was removed from maps and road signs in 2007. Jean Marchand led a 1949 strike in an industry centered on this material, which was covered by a book edited by a young Pierre Trudeau. During the Middle Ages, this material was widely believed to be the fur of a salamander. This material was used in the Scarecrow's costume, the Wicked Witch's broom, and the fake snow in The Wizard of Oz. Thousands of New Yorkers were exposed to small fibers of the substitute.
Asbestos.
Yes.
I thought I remember this thing being like cancerous.
This deity was identified by both Jacob Grimm and Victor Rydberg with Ninglud, a character who is rescued by the hero Svipdag in the Svipdagsmal, for 10 points each. Name this Norse deity who resides in Folkvang and is accused of incest in the Lokasena. The Gylfaginning and Voluspa both record that Freya was married to this god, whom some sources give as the father of Hnoss and Gersemi. His name refers to fury or frenzy.
Oh, jeez.
Answer.
Sir.
Odor. Due in large part to etymological similarities, Odor is often thought to have once been an identical figure to Odin, much as Freya is thought to have once been the same character as this wife of Odin.
Frigg.
Yes. $20 on that. Also 12. In a book about this politician's intimate world, gender researcher Clarence A. Tripp claimed that he had homosexual encounters throughout his life. This politician's approval of the largest mass execution in American history, a hanging of 38 Dakota Indians, has generated controversy from Native American groups. Dale Carnegie's biography of this president claims that he intentionally spent a few months a year away from his wife as a lawyer on a faraway circuit. John Hay, who had served as this president's private secretary, wrote a 10-volume account of his life. The differing opinions and personalities of this president's cabinet are described in Doris Kearns Goodwin's book, Team of Rivals.
Okay.
Yes.
Okay.
Bonus. This musician discussed the racial connotations of the word inventor and noted that there are maybe a half dozen musical inventors in European culture in a 1997 interview with Jacques Derrida. Fred White's name is artist whose breakout 1959 album contains the song Lonely Woman. This musician's unique early sound can be attributed to using an iconic white plastic alto saxophone.
I don't think it's Coltrane.
Answer.
Coltrane.
Ornette Coleman. Coleman's hits include a 1968 free jazz standard titled For the Blues of This Place. George Cohan's musical play Little Johnny introduced a song titled Give My Regards to This Place.
Broadway.
Yes.
Okay.
Coleman did most of his work in the city, where he performed at such venues as the Five Spot Cafe. It's also where Broadway happens to be located.
New York.
Yes. 20. 13. This property inversely correlates with the intensity of the pre-edge transition region in K-edge spectroscopy. In molecules with this property, normal modes cannot be both infrared and Raman active according to the rule of mutual exclusion. In molecules with this property, only transitions from Ungarada to Garada or vice versa are permitted by the Laporte rule. Rows of 1s and negative 1s make up the character tables which provide information about the operations named for this property. This word follows the prefix centro to describe point groups with this property about an inversion center. Polar molecules must lack this property so that their bond dipoles don't cancel each other out. For 10 points, name this property that ensures that molecules will remain the same after a rotation or internal...
Like symmetrical.
Yes.
Um,
Bonus, this regime passed the Ilbert Bill to allow local judges to try businessmen from abroad. The businessmen lobbied fiercely against the bill to protect their ability to abuse local workers. For 10 points each, name this regime. A set of protectionist, statist economic policies referred to as the licensed version of this regime was dismantled beginning in 1991.
The Great Society.
This is the Raj. India still retains much of the licensed Raj, such as wheat import duties, which many have unfavorably compared to these unpopular 19th century British grain tariffs. They were repealed appropriately by Robert Peel. This leader of the Anti-Corn Law League also wrote the essay How Wars Are Got Up in India, arguing against British military expenditure in India. He signed a free trade agreement with Michel Chevalier of France. Richard Cobden, 10. Toss-up 14. Most of the text of these works is preserved by Papyrus 46, which was given Category 1 classification by Kurt and Barbara Allen. The Epimenides paradox is referenced in one of these works when it refers to Cretans as liars, evil beasts, slow bellies. A passage from one of these works opens by comparing a piece of dough to the roots of an olive tree before analogizing new members of the community to branches broken off so that I might be grafted in. Fake examples of these texts were written for Seneca the Younger. A concept of self-emptying called kenosis is introduced in one of these works, 3 of which are grouped as pastoral ones. One of these works was used as textual evidence for the doctrine of sola fide, or justification by faith alone.
It's like the epistles.
Prompt.
Paul's epistles.
Yes.
Nice.
And your bonus. Answer the following about artwork created by randomly placing squares for 10 points each. Jean Arp, who created several collages by arranging square pieces of paper according to the laws of chance, was a key member of this absurdist movement alongside Marcel Duchamp. This artist was inspired by art to include similarly random arrangements in paintings like the 8 entries of his Spectrum Color series and Sen, in which the concentration of black rectangles increases towards its center.
I don't know. Motherwell.
Ellsworth Kelly.
Okay.
This building includes a stained glass window by Gerhard Richter, whose 11,500 panes were arranged randomly by a computer. This building, the tallest in the world until the construction of the Eiffel Tower, took over 6 centuries to complete.
In Cologne Cathedral.
Yes.
Awesome.
20.
That was really good.
Toss-up 15. Resistivity due to electron-electron scattering varies with this power of temperature according to the Bloch-Gruneisen formula. The log of this number appears in Landauer's formula for the energy needed to erase 1 bit of information. This is the largest dimension in which continuous symmetries cannot be broken by short-range interactions according to the Mermin-Wagner theorem. The property of a diabatic transition in a system with this many energy levels is given by the Landau-Zener formula. Transitions in a system with this many energy levels are described by the Einstein coefficients.
2?
Yes.
Nice.
Bonus. In the final scene from this series, its narrator tears pages 1 by 1 out of a red notebook in which each sentence cancels out the sentence before it. For 10 points each, name this series of novels. Its narrator follows Peter Stillman and notices that the first 15 letters of the streets he takes spell out the phrase the Tower of Babel.
Novels.
Answer. The New York Trilogy. A character named Paul Auster in Paul Auster's New York Trilogy studies the authorship of this novel. In a story by Borges, a line-by-line recreation of this novel by Cervantes is judged to be superior to the original. The final novel of the New York Trilogy is titled for this convention in detective fiction, in which it is seemingly impossible for a perpetrator to have both committed a murder and escaped the scene of a crime.
Locker room, Mr. Locker room.
Yes, 20. And the score is
Yeah, 215, 145.
215,
That's what we have.
145. And this is toss-up 16. In a string quartet by this composer, the opening viola solo starts with an eighth note B, a whole note B, then drops down to E, then plays an eighth note F sharp, a whole note G, and then drops down to B. The motif B flat, E flat, D, B flat appears in an orchestral piece by this composer that opens with a harp solo followed by a brass chorale. In a piece by this composer, the theme B, E, F sharp, G, A, B, B appears after an opening in which two flutes play undulating E minor 16th note figures to represent waters. That piece appears in a cycle after one depicting the castle Visegrad. In a string quartet by this man, a violin plays a high sustained E representing his tinnitus and oncoming deafness. For 10 points,
Beethoven?
-5. For 10 points, name this composer of the From My Life string quartet and the Moldau, which is among the 6 tone poems of his Ma Vlast.
Schmatana.
Yes. Your bonus. This work's final chapter criticizes the worldwide decay of utterance associated with imperial rule, which it claims has led to a degradation of its title concept. For 10 points each. Name this first century study of aesthetics by Longinus, which argues that its title concept is produced by great thoughts, strong emotions, and noble diction.
Discover.
On the Sublime. In On the Sublime, Longinus defends the poetic qualities of this thinker, whom he writes channeled off streams from the great Homeric flow. This man attacked the societal value of poetry in his dialogue, The Republic. Yes, in Phaedrus, Socrates argues that being a poet is the 6th best type of career, ahead of tyrants, laborers, and this profession. The statement, man is the measure of all things, originated from a man credited with inventing this profession, Protagoras. Answer.
Pirates.
Sophists. 10 points. 17. This member of the nobility was rumored to be behind the poisoning of Joanna, the reigning queen of Navarre, because Joanna died after putting on a pair of gloves this person sent. This person hired a retinue of spies that included Charlotte de Sauve and Isabelle de Limoy, and which was nicknamed the Flying Squadron. This person adopted a broken lance as her emblem after her husband's untimely death in a jousting accident. This queen often sought the services of Nostradamus, and according to a persistent...
Catherine de Medici.
Yes.
Nice, good buzz.
In your bonus, instead of these structures, one may draw hybrid diagrams in which pi bonds are pictured as curved or dotted. For 10 points each. Identify these diagrams in which the contributing Lewis structures of molecules with delocalized electrons are separated by double-headed arrows to indicate that the true structure is an intermediate between them.
It's like resonance structures, resonance items.
Yes. To further simplify its delocalized pi system, this simplest aromatic compound is drawn as a circle inside a hexagon.
Looks like that.
Cool.
Answer.
Benzene.
Yes. Either a charge or an unpaired electron is distributed in the 1 and 3 positions in resonance structures for this functional group. It consists of a CH2 bridge attached to a CH2 group.
No, that's only carbon and hydrogen. Carbomethyl.
Allyl group.
Okay, sure.
20. Toss of 18. In this novel, a dark-haired girl in the Golden Country flings off all her clothes with a single sweep of the arm that seemed to annihilate a whole culture, in a dream from which the protagonist awakens with the word Shakespeare on his lips. After the protagonist of this novel helps up a girl with her arm in a sling who has stumbled and fallen, she passes him a note that reads, "I love you." A couple in this novel conducts trysts at a series of odd locations, like a forest clearing, a noisy street market, and a ruined church tower, and finally the rented room above.
It's 1984.
Yes.
Boom. Good buzz.
This dramatist collaborated with the composer Dominic Kanza for a play set in Mama Nadi's brothel in the Democratic Republic of the Congo for 10 points each. Named as contemporary American playwright who won a Pulitzer Prize in 2009 for that play Ruined, as well as in 2017 for the play Sweat.
Sweat. 2017.
This is really recent. No.
No.
Lynn Nottage. Nottage's Sweat is set in a highly impoverished city in this American state. August Wilson set a cycle of 10 plays, including Fences and The Piano Lesson in this state.
Pennsylvania.
This garbage bin, an ex-baseball player, attempts to prevent his son Corey from playing pro football and has an affair with Alberta in August Wilson's Fences.
The movie. Is it Troy? Troy.
Yes, 20.
Awesome.
19. This work argues that scientific laws are used as inference tickets between factual statements as part of its argument that not all indicative sentences report facts. A.J. Ayer argued that rather than rejecting a certain concept, this work defends an honest version of it that does not command the stage of a private theater. This work critiques one perspective's dependence on yet another interior process of planning to plan, as part of showing how the intellectualist legend leads to an infinite regress. To solve that problem, this work articulates a distinction between knowing how and knowing that. This work argues that to conjoin or disjoin there occur mental processes, which there occur physical processes, is to make a category mistake.
Concept of mind.
That is correct.
Who wrote that?
Gilbert Ryle.
Bonus. A mayor of this city, Eugene Schmitz, formed an emergency committee of 50 in order to deal with the crisis in it. For 10 points each, named the city that was largely destroyed by an earthquake and the fires that ensued in 1906.
San Francisco. San Fran.
Thousands of people living in this part of San Francisco became paper sons who gained citizenship when their papers burned during the earthquake. This part of San Francisco was mostly populated by people who first went to Angel Island.
Like Chinatown.
Yes. San Francisco's rebirth from the ashes was marked by a 1915 Pacific Exposition celebrating an achievement in this modern-day country. Its president, Roberto Chiari broke relations with the U.S. until a 1977 treaty.
1977.
No, it has to be. It's probably South America. Honduras.
Panama.
Okay.
20 points. Last toss-up. The literary scene in this country was shocked at the frank sexuality of a story whose protagonist drowns himself in shame right after spending an evening at a brothel. An essay describing how its author quit medical school to address the spiritual sickness of this country prefaces a collection that includes a story about a disgraced scholar who copies manuscripts while stealing from his employers. This country itself is symbolized by a character who is preoccupied with drawing the perfect circle as he awaits execution.
China.
Yes.
Okay.
Sweet.
Bonus. Consider a linear transformation P that represents a projection from a space U onto a subspace V. For 10 points each, the eigenvalues of P can be either of these two numbers, which are also the only values found in an identity matrix.
0, 0, 1.
Yes. Since the eigenvalues of P are either 0 or 1, these two quantities for P must be equal because the sum of the eigenvalues is equal to the dimension of the subspace V onto which V projects.
Wait, what's it asking for?
Answer. The trace and the rank.
Okay.
Since P is a projection, it also has this property, which means that applying P twice is the same as applying P once. Symbolically, this is equivalent to saying that P squared equals P.
Omission.
Idempotent. 10 points on that final bonus.
Final score is 185.
Yeah, that's what I have.
I don't know.
185, 300. Good game.
Good game. Good job.
Yeah.